From Maine to Texas to California, there are all kind of things going on with the real estate industry, especially construction. Even in this late spring, at the end of May 22, you might think that you're seeing articles about real estate dropping and how is that affecting construction. Maybe you're waiting for light at the end of the tunnel. The bottom line is inflation for construction is here to stay, and even delays are here to stay. It's not going to change anytime soon, and it comes from every area, from lumber, materials, labor, even availability. There's an article from a local publication, local news in Maine, that builders are experiencing shortage of labor and materials. That's really the core of it. There's a shortage of labor and materials. You notice he's not talking about the cost of labor or the cost of materials. It's a shortage. Part of it, it's delivery truck fuel, right? So let's say you're a builder, you're constructing a home, and you need all kinds of things. Lumber comes to mind because you see the lumber. When you're building a house, all you see is lumber. First thing you see is the framing of the house, the 2x4s, the sheathing, the roofing. It's all lumber. And then gradually you see paint and other things. But when you think about a home being built, you think of lumber. But there's more to it than that. Most of the materials that go into the house are other than lumber. You have the sheetrock, you have siding, you have roofing, you have all your interior fixtures. You have a lot of PVC that goes into trim, parts, plumbing. And according to this builder, he's been a contractor for 30 years, never seen anything like this. Well, what is he seeing? Well, it's crazy. So one of the things he's seeing is that prices are going up by 20 or 30% in a short period of time. On one day, you think that it's going to cost you maybe $15,000 for materials to finish out the inside of a house, and then you go to your materials provider, and it's going to cost $28,000. Well, you're just a builder. You're passing this along to your client, your home owner that's putting on an addition, or your home buyer that's building the new home. So that's going to be a shock. In addition, there might be a delay. You might have contracted for a 6-month build, but now it's going to take 9 months. That's going to affect the homeowner and you. Well, the homeowner now has to have a place to live for at least 3 months because they probably planned on moving in. What about you as a builder? Well, you're planning all your jobs out based on completion of this job. If you are building this home and took on another job that's going to start in month 7, you can't really start that job if you're still involved with this house. So now that pushes that one out. That throws off your numbers. That throws off your revenue for the year because you're not really going to make any more money off of this one house that takes 9 months instead of 6. But now you can't start the next project and start making revenue from that house. So what do you have to do? If you know that projects are going to take longer, you have to build more revenue into each project. Instead of doing 3 projects a year, if you only do 2, all of your expenses you have to divide up over 2 instead of divided by 3. And that's going to affect the pricing on each one, especially when the timelines are unknown. If you know it's going to take 9 months, that's one thing. But if you don't know, it might take 10, it might take 11, it's harder for you to plan that out. You have to leave more gaps in your schedule. And good builders cost out their variable expenses based on very tight timelines. The plumber comes on a certain day, electrician the next day, sheetrock, electrician comes back to do the finish work. It's like all in a tight timeline. If those are all thrown off, now instead of having it be like Tetris, where the blocks fall and you fit them together, you have to wait for one block to fall and stop before you even order the next block. And that just adds more time in the system. Any gap of time is time that your equipment is unused while you're making payments on it. Your employees aren't working while you're paying them. Your rent, electricity, all your expenses are still clocks ticking and you're not collecting revenue. So it's a bad thing for a builder. So why is this happening? Well, this station did a great job of interviewing a lumber yard provider. What happened was a lot of manufacturers weren't prepared for the surge and they're starting to catch up. Even things like they need vinyl to make PVC boards, you can't get the vinyl. So even the factory that makes the PVC trim can't get vinyl to make the trim. They also don't have certain colors to make certain color decking. Things like paint, stain, very minor things that don't seem like they're a big deal are getting in the way of finishing projects. In addition, that factory that makes the PVC boards, they might not have the employees. You've heard of the Great Resignation. People are quitting their jobs. Who wants to work in a PVC plant? So those are the first jobs that people quit. And even if they didn't quit, they might be under quarantine because of COVID. So if they have to stay home, they can't work. And now you have an additional problem. You have a trucking problem because the fuel prices are up. And when fuel prices go up, the trucking companies pick and choose their jobs. If the shipping quote is not profitable, they're just not going to take the job. So it may be that a job that doesn't have as much profit margin to ship that PVC vinyl boards isn't going to make it to the top of the list. It might wait 3 or 4 weeks or a month until all the other gravy jobs get taken, and now they ship those PVC boards. That puts a delay where the lumberyard doesn't have the materials to sell. Even if that delivery is done, because of the fuel price and also the higher wages for truckers, the lumberyard has to pay 2 or 3 times the cost for delivery for diesel. And we didn't even talk about accessories. Doors, windows. Manufacturers are having trouble getting tempered glass or raw materials for the frames. Again, not enough truck drivers. In previous years, you could get windows in 2 or 3 weeks. Now it's taking anywhere from 5 weeks to 5 months. So what happens if you're building a house and you want to order windows? When do you order them? If you know that from the time that you start framing, let's say your site work is done, your grading is done, you're ready to start pouring your foundation. When do you order your windows? Well, if you know your foundation is going to take, 10 to 14 business days, your framing might take 22 business days, your dry-in might take, another maybe week or so, and okay, you're going to start needing windows in maybe 3 or 4 weeks. You order them maybe when you start framing or maybe when your foundation's done. Well, now if it's going to take 5 months, you need to order them before you start doing foundation. But what if they show up early? You got to store them. You got to make sure they're not getting damaged. You got to pay for them early. So it throws all the efficiency of organization off. At the same time, if you don't have enough windows, now your employees are sitting around. Here's what he says. There are many times when there's only enough windows for one job, and now you have all your employees sitting around doing nothing because you don't have other jobs for them to work on. So all these things may seem small by themselves, but they add up to create big problems for the builder, for the client, for the property owner, and even for insurers. Now, with the real estate market seemingly cooling off, meaning less people are buying homes, there are some places that the building permits are going down, meaning that builders are filing for less permits. Well, let's take a look at that. Why might that be happening? Think about what we just discussed with materials and lumber and labor. If you're a builder and you know for a fact it's going to take you 5 weeks to get windows and the materials prices might be 30% more, are you going to bother trying to build a house that you don't know is going to sell for a certain amount? Or are you going to take on a contract for a remodel if you don't know if you're going to be able to get parts? Look, if you do a contract with a client for a remodel for a certain price, let's say it's going to be a 1,500 square foot addition on a house, and your contract for that is $260,000. You got to pull permits and you got to start that process. Well, now that you know that the materials prices might go up, maybe the delays might come into play. So instead of pricing at $260, you're going to price it at $320. Give yourself some leeway. And also, instead of saying a 6-month turnaround, you're going to say a 9-month turnaround. Well, you may have fewer clients take that deal because it might be out of their budget, it might be out of their timeline. So there's less permits. Now, what happens when there's fewer homes being built or additions being built? Well, now it's like a spiral because now the builder has less projects to work on, so they have to price the ones they do have higher to cover their fixed expense. The backlog of homes for new home buyers goes down, so the resale market goes up, right? You see how that spiral works? So if you're a builder, you may not be as ambitious or aggressive about projects. In fact, It's making the labor pool even more dire, because as builders do less projects, they have less work for skilled tradespeople, framers, plumbers, construction people, roofers. So when there's less work for those individual trades, they're going to go do something else. They're going to get into another line of business. Maybe they'll go work on the shrimp boat. Maybe they'll go move to another state where there's work. And now it's a deepening spiral. So now you have to pay more for that labor in your home market. This is all adding up for contractors, and it's affecting consumers as well, because the home market is taking a little bit of a pause, so people are backing off from buying because the prices are up, but there's still the same number of people who need a home. The people who need homes didn't go away. It's just the price went up. So as it takes a pause, builders who are filling that market, backfilling the housing units, are not going to be that ambitious and aggressive about doing it if they see people like putting the brakes on buying houses, which is going to mean that there's fewer houses being built. And that could lead to a even more severe housing crisis in years to come. Let us know what you think in the comments. See you on the next video.